Hello and welcome to the new Indie Pattern Designer series, interview, behind the scenes, whatever you may want to call it, podcast with me, Deepika, founder of Pattern Review. And today we have with us Molly Hamilton, owner, designer, pattern drafter, a person who wears many hats at the Folkwear Pattern Company. Many of you are familiar with this wonderful pattern company. We've been using their patterns for years now. And I thought it might be kind of fun to go behind the scenes and ask Molly what goes on into creating these really unique patterns, which most of these patterns, if you don't know or not familiar with, are based on clothing designs worn by people around the world. So it's just really, really cool. And I'm really looking forward to this interview. So pull up a chair, grab a drink, a snack, and hope you enjoy with us. Molly, welcome to Pattern Review, and thank you
Thank you.
so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
All right. And I also wanted to mention that we do sell footwear patterns on Pattern Review, have been for many, many years. So, and of course, they're available on Folkwear's website. I will leave a lot of the links and resources which we end up talking about in the show notes below, and I will post this on Pattern Review's blog. So I hope you support both Pattern Review and Folkwear by trying out these patterns. And if you have already sewn with these patterns, write a review. Tell us about that. Molly, so tell us a little bit about Folkwear Patterns. Very unique company. It was started in the 70s, and most of your clothing patterns are regional designs. And tell me how this idea came about.
Yes, so this company was started in the 70s, actually before I was even born. So I still talk occasionally to the original owners of the company. It was three women in California who started the company because they felt like they were not seeing the designs they wanted to to sew and wear from the um, big four pattern company at the time, so McCall, Simplicity. And so they also traveled. One of the women's father was had a sewing factory, so she had experience in drafting patterns. And one of the other women was really into the embellishment and the embroidery and all the kind of handwork that was done on a lot of clothing that they found around the world. So these women got together and decided they wanted to offer something more. And so they started this company, Folkwear, based on folk patterns, clothing from around the world. And then quickly got into vintage clothing as well. So historic clothing, and it just kind of went from there.
I think it's really great because through your patterns, you're sort of creating a different culture, allowing people to embrace different cultures, different clothing, started a conversation around clothing worn around the world. So it's pretty amazing. I have to share a little story with you. When I first started Pattern Review, and so I was born in India, Delhi, India, and one of the clothing which is worn by women there is salwar kameez, which is a long tunic with pants. And when I first started sewing, you know how you always try to create the culture you're from or you're inspired by. There are no patterns for even like that I could see, and the closest I could find was a tunic, border tunic. And
Mhm.
then people started asking me about, sari is a 6 yard piece of fabric worn draped around your body with a tight fitting blouse. People
Mhm.
started asking me, do you have a pattern for a blouse? I said, oh, I don't really know. That seems very um, complicated to sew. But in folkwear, I found a pattern for a
Mhm.
sari blouse. And so
Mhm.
that's pretty cool that you've actually done the research and are providing patterns for all these different clothing. So that's great. Um,
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
so
It's a special part of the company. I do love that we have the research and the information behind these, beautiful designs and clothing
yeah, so tell me how it has evolved in, you know,
over the
last few
last
years.
almost
Like,
50 years. Yeah.
yes, since
Um,
you acquired the company.
so I took over the company about 7 years ago.
Okay.
And so before that, Folkwear was run for many years by these women in California. They eventually sold to Taunton Press, and Taunton owned the pattern company for um, maybe 15 years, 10 or 15 years. And they did added more patterns to the catalog. They did quite a few historic patterns at that time. And then eventually it was sold, the company was sold to Lark Books, which is a publishing company that's did a lot of craft publishing and it was based in Asheville, which is near where I am. And eventually I met one of the owners who, said, I want to retire. And she bought the folkwear from Lark Books. And she said she was one of the owners of Lark Books and she wanted to retire. She said, I want to find somebody who could run this company to keep it going, to steward it. And I feel like I am kind of more of a steward of this company rather than, I'm not the founder or creator of it. I am keeping it going. I'm helping it evolve. So that's sort of the history of folkwear. It has endured through recessions.
Pretty
It has
amazing.
gone through a
It's really
lot, and
amazing.
it has continued to be a beloved company, and I'm really happy to be with it. Um, since I took it over, we have done a lot more digital patterns. So the catalog was our patterns were all print when I took it over, and there was even the vellums that are used to create the patterns were starting to dissolve because they were so old.
Right.
So my goal is to and has been to basically digitize this so these patterns and instructions and illustrations will be preserved and can continue to be used and added to and have more, I guess, formats. So and to be
Right. And
available
it's
for more
easier
people.
to scale. Yeah.
Yes,
Reach
exactly.
even more people.
Yes, and I mean, so for instance, when Taunton Press had a company, they would, they put out several historic patterns, but they only made them to what the grade rule then was like size 14 or 16, which in our current grade rule is like a medium, size medium. So their largest size would fit me, and I'm not really big. So getting these patterns digitized also allows us to regrade the pattern,
Expand.
so to make
Yeah.
it
To expand
larger,
the
to
size ranges.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it's more accessible to everybody. So that's, those have all been things that
That's a
I've
pretty
done.
big undertaking, I might add. It
It's
really is.
it is big.
You make
Folkwear
it
has
sound
over,
so easy, but
yeah,
I bet it's been a challenge. It's been because you do have a large line of patterns.
we do. There's over 100 patterns in print, and we probably have another maybe 20 to 25 that we haven't even put back into print that have gone out of print over the years past, or yeah, so that's it's definitely an undertaking for sure. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we continue to add patterns to the catalog as well. We create new patterns, a couple every year or so. We'll add to it when something, we have lots of ideas constantly, hear from customers, things they want
Oh,
to
that's
see.
so great to hear. That's wonderful. Um, so do you use, I mean, I'm loving the tunic slash dress slash top you're
Mhm.
wearing, but I wanted to ask you, do you mostly use folkwear patterns for your own clothing, or do you use other designers as well?
Oh, I definitely use other designers as well. But I do love folkwear patterns. It's easy to look at them and think, oh, well, this is just a specialized for, a special occasion or something that I wouldn't wear. But I find that the patterns just lend themselves to so much creativity as well as different interpretations. So this is the 117 Croatian shirt. And originally it was a man's shirt, and it can be a woman's shirt, of course.
I would have never
But
guessed that. And I love the
I made
detailing
it.
on the front.
Yeah, so this detailing is really, it's tucks that these small little pin tucks, but then I did embroidery thread and made them into honeycomb, which is taught in the patterns. A lot of our patterns teach these techniques for embellishment and sewing. So everything from embroidery to pin tucks to beading to smocking. So there's a lot in there. But yeah, I made this top into a dress, and it's a great sort of shoulder season dress. I really like it. So I make for instance our two 5 frontier shirts is, it's very much looks like a stylized cowboy shirt or a Western wear shirt, which people of course love and want to make a Western wear shirt, but it also makes a really fabulous button down shirt. It's got a stand collar. I just make it with a white linen. I don't put any of the sort of Western embellishment stuff on it. And it is an easy, quick, beautiful shirt. Fits me great. I love it. And so I've made that several times as just a shirt to wear. So, the patterns are definitely open to interpretation and can be used for, yeah, lots of modern wear as well. So the Rosie the Riveter pattern I really love, 240 Rosie the Riveter. That's got a pair of
The
pants that I
overalls,
made,
yeah,
and I love
right?
those.
I
Yeah,
mean, and
it's got
overalls all
overalls,
the trend.
pants,
Yeah.
and a shirt. So I've made the shirt, short sleeve shirt. It's a great little quick, camp button down camp shirt, and the trousers are those wide leg pants, very in style now. So
Yes.
I've made those for myself too. And the overalls, I've made the overalls into a dress. So yeah, I use folkwear patterns a lot in my own sewing for my own personal as well as, for the company.
That's amazing. So I wonder if this question you get asked by your customers or people visiting that your website and buying your patterns or wondering about your patterns. And we hear a lot on pattern review too, this topic of cultural appropriation versus appreciation. Your patterns are based on clothing worn in different cultures. Do people ask you, is it okay to make those patterns and wear them in our daily lives? So I'm just curious if you get that question, and if so, what are your thoughts on the subject?
Yeah. I think it's a really important topic, and we uh, take this topic into consideration a lot whenever we are working with our patterns, marketing our patterns, creating new patterns. Um, and there, appropriation, we generally see appropriation as taking from a culture without acknowledgement, without any sort of recourse for, what that piece of clothing is or that pattern is. I feel like, appreciation is understanding where did that design come from? Why is it coming from that? What's the history? What is the culture behind it? And so Folkwear has, from the beginning, tried to have a lot of information teaching about where, these clothes come from, what the history is, what the culture they're coming from, and so that there is an appreciation rather than just taking. And we do get questions about it sometimes, and you know, I feel like we've done a pretty good job and continue to want to learn and talk about it more. I there's one of the things I really love about folkwear is that we do provide patterns that you can't find anywhere else. So for you were
It's
talking
true.
about the choli and the
Yeah.
the sawar kameez, that's those, we have patterns for those. You really can't, it's
You
very hard to
really
find
can't.
anywhere
And
else.
even in India, I've done my
Yeah,
research, and even in India, there aren't any
yeah,
companies which are
right.
making sewing patterns for
Yeah,
people who want to sew it themselves and not take it
right.
to a tailor or
Yeah,
somebody who'll sew it. So
yeah.
it's a great service.
It is, and I feel like that is a really important part of folklore, that, we have these patterns that are providing for the culture that they come from as well. So there's a large acknowledgement and a large appreciation. It's a big part of, what folklore stands for. We have a pattern for a Navajo blouse. mostly it's Navajo women who buy that pattern so they can make the blouse for their graduations, weddings, coming of age ceremonies. So that is it's just, I feel like it's a really important part of folkwear, and I love that this company provides that.
It's so wonderful to hear that. And I just got some chills hearing about what we just talked about.
Mhm.
I think it's just wonderful that these patterns exist, and I'm so glad you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
great and in business and continuing to evolve to newer designs. It's also now, are you still focused on historical and regional clothing patterns, or are you branching out into uh, what someone might call more modern, everyday patterns? Or is that not
Yeah,
something
that's a
which you
good
do?
question. I mean, we're trying to stay true to the core
Vision, yeah.
folkwear, which is historic and cultural folk clothing from around the world. We did put out a couple years ago a line of sort of basics, and these, if you think about what the basic sort of clothing pieces are that again you can find around the world, there's a coat, a jacket, a sort of tunic,
Yeah.
and a dress. And so we did this basics line, and that was in production before I took the company on. So I kind of just kept it going, and that's been a lot of fun. And those are easy. Those were like an idea of a very simple patterns that people could use for creativity. Still sort of based in the idea of what is a basic garment that you're going to find anywhere, or could find all over. Um, and but we try to stick with you know the history of the company, which is folk clothing and historic designs. Now, the historic design thing and vintage designs has evolved because now
Yes,
when the company started was in the 70s, that's coming to be vintage. It's
I
almost
know.
50 years ago. Um, so now, we're gonna be putting out a pattern next month that is a late 60s, early 70s design, and to me felt I was almost like, gosh, this isn't, but it's kind of historic, where the company's
Yeah,
that old now that we can
yeah.
almost come back to the roots. So
That's amazing. I love
yeah.
that. Um, okay, so on that, if let's say someone wants to try a folkware pattern, they've not used folkware company patterns before, which pattern would you recommend? What would you say to them, and which pattern would you recommend?
Gosh, that's a hard one. There's so many patterns and there's something
I
for
know.
everybody, I feel like.
Don't make it easy.
Yeah, I mean, so our most popular pattern right now is that I would recommend probably as a good starter would be the 129 Japanese Happy and Haori. Um, that pattern is it is one of our most popular patterns for a reason. It's just a great, it's a Japanese jacket. There's two jackets in there, so Happy and a Haori. So one's a little bit of a shorter sleeve, one's a little bit more formal. They're both more informal jackets that would be worn over kimonos uh, or on their own, but they just are great for creativity. You can use lots of different kinds of fabrics. I think we teach an embroidery design and a rice paste dyeing technique in the pattern,
Wow.
with some
It's almost
designs
like a
in
mini
there.
workshop.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And there's two patterns for these really beautiful, elegant jackets that can be, more formal or, made out of silk or, a cotton easy jacket, almost like a little robe. So
Wow.
I would recommend
Okay.
that one. I love for the historic patterns. People really love the 205 Gibson girl blouse. It's a very flattering blouse. It's beautiful. You can make it out of, make it very simply and easily with simple fabric, or you can do, lace and lace insertion and tucks. And so there's a lot to it as well.
I don't know how you do it. It seems like a lot of information in just one pattern that you're not only getting pattern pieces and instructions, but
Mhm.
a lot of different embellishment techniques
Yes.
to expand your sewing horizons. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you have a
Thanks.
favorite fabric to sew with? I know that you're wearing linen,
Favorite
so
fabric. I do love linen. I have a lot of linen in my wardrobe. I like a nice cotton lawn, but I also really we have
Ooh.
these rayon. Oh yeah, the tensile twill. Tensile twill is always really nice too for pants or I don't know overalls, something like that. I like that too.
Yeah, yeah, I like Tencel. Do you
Yeah.
have, I have actually been fortunate enough to travel to Asheville. I just love it. It's so pretty
Mhm.
up there. Do you have a fabric store locally you get your fabrics from, or do you
Oh,
buy
we
online
don't really have a fabric store. We are kind of becoming a bit of a fabric store ourselves. We carry a lot of fabrics because I wanted to have fabrics that worked well for our patterns, as well as, try to have some sustainable options. We started buying linens and cottons, mostly natural fibers, some rayons, and we carry those in our online store as well as, people can stop in. We're starting to expand that a little bit more and see how that
That's
goes.
wonderful. See, I would have not known that had it not been for this question or the interview. So, you heard it here. I'll include links down below if you need some fabrics to go with those patterns. Check out Folkwear's website and see what you can find there.
Yeah.
Um, I loved when you when in your bio on Folkware's website you talk a little bit about traveling yourself and which inspires a lot of those designs. Tell me about some of the fun places you've traveled to. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I do love to travel and I love to see textiles and the history of the region. You just learn so much about why there are certain designs from certain areas and how they came about. I recently this spring I was in Guatemala and in northern Arizona, both places where there's a lot of history of a deep history of weaving, beautiful artistic designs. Guatemala had incredible fabric and are so many beautiful embroideries like just on the hupils and I was just blown away by how beautiful all the women's clothes were and what they had. And then Northern Arizona, of course, the Navajo weaving tradition is stunning, and that was really special. I mean, I do. I see new beautiful things everywhere I go. I really loved Romania. Again,
wow,
incredible
yeah,
deep
I've heard so much
textile
about it.
tradition, really deep textile tradition. Lots of the embroideries of shirts and clothing, as well as just like very fine handwork techniques. And that area had, influences from Germany, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, um, that have just meshed and come together to create really different. Every little region has something a little different that was really special. We also horseback rode through the country, so I got my sense of adventure was I mean, that
Oh,
was
that's
really
wonderful.
yeah.
Now, I believe you have some show and tell for us. So, do we
Okay,
see some
yeah.
more
So
patterns?
I just brought a couple of things out. Of course, I'm wearing the Croatian shirt. Um, and I brought, let's see, this up. So a lot of our designs are based on original garments. We um, have original, it started from the very beginning of the company. They would have original garment and they would make a pattern from that, getting history and information from sort of experts and people from the culture to, make sure that it was presented correctly and well. But this this is our Tibetan panel coat. This is the original Tibetan panel coat, and this is a very popular pattern. It was one of the original folkwear patterns, but this is the original from the Tibetan region. And these panels are hand woven with wool that was either dyed or came from the sheep. And then these has these sort of cheap silk, Chinese silk on the sleeves. But this is just a really, you know, it's a
It's so fun.
beautiful and it's
Yeah.
and it's just a great pattern. The people who are weavers really love to use it, but as well as people who want to present a really beautiful fabric that they have. So this is the original, and then we have just this is just a cotton ikat that that is the same pattern, but
Is
just
it
you
the
can
same
see
pattern?
it's just a little
Yeah.
different. It's the same
It
pattern.
looks so
This
different.
one's been lined, and the fabric choice has just made the difference in that. But it's a a really diverse, you can just make so many different things with this. We have another one that's all dupioni, patchwork dupioni. The whole thing is just really bright, loud, beautiful, vest. One of, I think, our most stunning original pieces is this Hungarian zur. This is the back. It's a coat that is originally from really somewhat part of the area where I was in Romania, but that's Hungarian. And it was worn by shepherds in the region, and it has all this incredible cut work, felt
Wow,
work.
I thought that was
Yeah.
fabric like that.
No, well, it's all
Oh,
cut felt work. It's all wool. It's just absolutely stunning.
beautiful.
And we have the pattern for this, as well as the information on how to do the cut work embroidery or cut work felt work. Yeah, it's really, really
It's
beautiful.
like it almost is like wearable art.
Yes, and a lot of we have a
Gorgeous.
lot of people who get our patterns to do art, wear art to wear. Um, and hope that we influence people to be creative and have,
There's so
make
much
something.
to learn and so many things
Yeah.
um to
I mean, and then if
create.
you just want a really simple coat, this is the same pattern, just made from a wool. And they did a little bit of machine embroidery, just some stitching, quilting lines.
Wow. And so
Yeah.
this one has
Yeah.
sleeves. Okay, the other two didn't have sleeves, right? Or did
Mm-hmm.
I not
Yeah,
see
the other
that?
one did. Yeah, the Tibetan panel coat does not have sleeves. It's really a sleeveless. This one has the sleeve. Yeah.
Okay. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So these are just,
Oh, I
kind of
like the
examples of,
evolution of the
yeah.
pattern, right? With based on
Yeah.
different fabrics. It looks
Mm-hmm.
very different.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're almost all out of time, but I
Sure.
always like to end with a question, which um, is always fun to hear about different people. Can you share with us a tip or a habit which you have incorporated into your life, which has made a huge impact for you?
Um, Sewing tip or life tip?
Anything, anything.
Um, well, first sewing tip, because I'm constantly getting sidetracked by work or kids or other things, I like to set myself up for success. So I will, for instance, pin a seam. If I know I have to leave, I'll just pin the seam. So when I come back to the project, I know, okay, this is the one I'm gonna start sewing right now, and I've already set myself up to. That's been huge. Helps me keep projects going and coming back. I'm not lost when I come back to the project. So I find that one huge. Lots of, I know, women especially, we just get distracted by the
We do so
life
many
that
things.
is happening
Yes.
constantly. So that's a good one. For life, one of the most and best things that is a habit that has changed for me is every night before I go to sleep, writing down 3 things that made me smile that day. So it could have been seeing my cat laying in the sun, or some flowers that were really pretty in the garden, um, watching a funny video that my friend sent me. So anything that just made me smile that day, I write it down, just 3 of them, and it does change the way your brain sees the world and to a more optimistic, sort of happier place. And that's made a huge difference in my life. Very
I
simple.
love that.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. I think I might have to try to incorporate that into my schedule as well. It seems like a good way to end the day on a happy note, on a
Yeah.
positive
Yeah.
note.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you for that. And thank you for talking with me. I had a lot of fun learning about folkwear and your design inspirations and how the company came to be. And I love your beautiful garment you're wearing, and the
Thank
color is
you.
fabulous on you, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks.
Um, for all those who are watching us and or listening to us, thank you so much for joining us. If you like these heart-to-heart conversations, I hope you will subscribe, and it'll really motivate me to do more of these interviews. And thanks for watching. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you so much, Deepika.